Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video about Black Christmas and its underwhelming sequels. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to talk about all three movies, the original and its two remakes. And when I'm talking about each of them, I'm going to go through the good and the bad. And then when I'm talking about the original, I'm going to talk about some iconic scenes and fun facts. And then with the remakes, I'm going to talk about Easter eggs from the originals also, in addition to good and bad. Okay, let's get into it. So let's start with the good about Black Christmas. Hint, this is pretty much all just going to be good. There's literally one bad thing that isn't even a bad thing in my opinion. So the original 1974 Black Christmas is an underrated masterpiece. When I watched this movie for the first time a year ago, I watched it Christmas Eve by myself with headphones at my desktop, and when I say I was, for one, scared for the first time watching a horror movie, and I can't even remember how long, but also so mad that I had not heard about this movie, more about this movie before, because I'd heard a little bit about it from like really you know, horror junkies and all that, but not enough for how fucking good this is. I mean, in my opinion, this movie blows away Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, a lot of what we think of as the classic slashers. I'm like, this is so much fucking better. And turns out this movie helped pioneer the entire fucking slasher genre as we know it, and it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would go as far to say as this movie might be better than Halloween. Just my opinion. Don't come for me. Okay. Yeah, just I'm really desensitized to horror, so when I watched this movie and for the first time and was able to actually be pretty creeped out, like listening to the phone calls and just the tension that it builds, it just is so well done. And yeah, one of my favorite movies, and I constantly am trying to get other people to watch it. So I'm really happy I actually found it on YouTube for free, like, and not just like some weird bootleg, like legit from like posted by YouTube or by like the people, like full copyright. And yeah, so I've been sending that to everyone, being like, watch this fucking movie. The ambiguity and the restraint of the original is one of the things that made it so great, because you see so little of the killer, you know so little about them, and anything you do know is really kind of up to your interpretation to a certain extent. And yeah, and I think that just really, our minds can create something a lot scarier than a lot of the time what can be shown on screen. And so I think that's a really effective way of doing things. And I mean, a good example is Blair Witch Project, how scary that is to a lot of people, because there's not a whole lot shown, and it is kind of up to your mind to be like, figure it out on your own. And so that allows your mind to create things that are based upon your fears, whereas, you know, a monster or something is only going to be scary to a certain amount of people. So, if that makes sense. So, talking about the original, we cannot not talk about the phone calls. The phone calls in this movie are one of the creepiest things that I think I've ever heard, honestly. And from also my experiences kind of watching this with men, I would say, like, you can definitely, this movie's definitely more scary when you're a woman. And I think men can definitely enjoy this movie, but it's definitely a movie that like women are gonna feel very uncomfortable during those calls. And yeah, I don't know, and it's just so like well done, the way that he changes voices, and yeah, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it just like kind of sends chills down your spine. And how he can switch from being very calm when he says, I'm gonna kill you, versus when he's screaming about Billy and Agnes, or when he's saying extremely vulgar things. Just the swift changes, and the fact that it's in this unembodied voice, and that you're never really end up seeing, makes it all the more terrifying. On that same note, the fact that we don't see or really learn anything about the killer makes it really scary, because it could be anyone, and that's the reality of serial killers. They could be anyone out there, you know. You don't know. A lot of the time serial killers have great lives and are successful and get along well with people, so it makes it that much more scary and realistic, the fact that it's not this like Michael Myers in a mask that you know exactly what he looks like, and you know that he's practically supernatural and all this. Like, knowing so little about it makes it so much more realistic versus a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael or even a Leatherface, you know? I really like how the movie builds tension slowly. It's not just you know, killing out the gate and everything's terrifying immediately. And I mean, the first call comes in and that one is obviously terrifying, but it's slow paced, and I really like that. I like slow burn movies that take time to build characters, build tension, and build up to something. There is an effective red herring in Peter, Jess's boyfriend, and I think, well, most of us probably were like, okay, he's too obvious, it can't be him. But there were moments where we're like, is it him? But yeah, so I really liked that. And I mean, even if it wasn't him, he's still kind of a piece of shit. Like, just saying. Bob Clark, the director, purposely wanted to make his movie with realistic characters and flawed, complex characters, but also smart ones, because he'd seen, you know, in all these like teen movies and especially teen horrors that the teenagers were so dumb and just made the stupidest decisions, and he was like, I know young people, that's not how they act. So I thought that was really interesting. I liked that a lot. And really great cinematography. A lot of the shots I really love, like the shot, you know, opening shot that is from the killer's perspective going into the house and just from outside, and that seems so small these days compared to a lot of what is done, but that was pretty new at the time, and that was really, this movie inspired a lot of things. It inspired Halloween to a certain extent, because of just the way that it used its shots and the way that it did things. And yeah, just the slow creeping shots of it from the killer's perspective. And then when we're following Jess at the final chase scene, and we are just seeing her, so we see her go to the door and then we see her going back, and then we just see the hand come out and grab her, and it's just so well done, and I love it. Also, this movie was pretty groundbreaking for its subject matter. The fact that its main character was a sexually active woman who got pregnant on accident and decided she wanted to have an abortion, and when her boyfriend didn't like it, she wasn't taking no for an answer. She's like, this is my body, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want, thank you very much. Okay. And this was only a year, this movie came out only a year after Roe v. Wade passed, so that is pretty groundbreaking. A lot of movies and TV shows will shy away from that even to this day. So yeah, so a lot of like movies, especially following this, the final girl was always a virgin, and that was a big thing about a big theme, and you know, has become a horror trope of sex equals death and being a virgin equals surviving. And this movie was before then and was just like, no, our final girl is going to be a sexually active woman who's getting an abortion and doesn't care what the fuck you think about it. And props to this movie for that. Okay, the bad in this movie. It's a slow burn. It's not, you know, super gory kills. It's not Michael stalking, you know, it's not like Halloween Kills, one of the newest Halloween movie where there's like 40 deaths or something and they're ridiculous and over the top. This is not that movie. So, you know, if you're looking for that, you're not gonna enjoy this movie. You'll probably enjoy the 2006 remake. We're about to get into that, okay? So let's discuss some iconic scenes from this movie. So obviously all of the phone calls, especially the first one, the pretty piggy. So creepy. Oh my god, this just like any shot of Claire in the attic with the bag on her face in the rocking chair, just fucking there, and everybody's just chilling, walking through the house, you know, walking outside the house. There's a little candle by her even. Nobody fucking notices this girl. And oh my god, it's just like haunting in so many ways. Also Mrs. Mack's death in the attic. Yeah, just Mrs. Mack's character. Any scene pretty much she's in, whether it's her hiding booze in everything, including the back of the toilet, which was pretty gross. I mean, I understand that's not the area that poop goes in, but still, like, ooh. And like a book, and then like when she's showing Claire's dad around and she's trying to cover up the poster of like the peace sign, but it's two naked people having sex, I assume, and all that kind of stuff. That scene was just hilarious, and that's another thing I love about this movie, is that there's great moments of humor within it that actually feel appropriate. Like, you know, the orphan, them, you know, underprivileged kids, the thing they did, that they did for them, and Barb is there, and Santa Claus is drinking, and Barb is giving alcohol to the kids and cussing up a storm, and yeah, it was just, yeah, hilarious. Also, speaking of Barb, her turtle speech at the house when she's super drunk talking about turtles having sex for 3 hours, or 3 days, sorry, 3 days. Fucking shit was hilarious, so iconic. Obviously Barb's death with the glass unicorn and "Oh Come All Ye Faithful" being sang by Christmas carolers outside, being by children nonetheless, being intercut with her being stabbed with the glass unicorn, and just the cinematography of that scene, just, it all is perfect. Another great Barb moment, the whole fellatio scene, and just everything that comes from that is freaking hilarious and great. The calls coming from the inside the house, you know, that, iconic. Like, I know it was used in one movie before this and it's based on an urban legend, but I feel like most of the time, like, I feel like it's not bad to say that this is kind of the origin of the calls coming from inside the house, or, you know, I don't know, not the origin, but like within popular movies. And probably my favorite scene of all is just the ending shot of everybody leaving the house like fucking idiots and just leaving Jess in bed there, and apparently knocked out until like the next day, and they assume Peter was the killer, so they're just like, oh, it's fine, blah, 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 blah. And we slowly go through the whole house and see everything, and then go up to the attic, see that Mrs. Mack and Claire are still there, along with Mr. Billy, that's the killer. And yeah, it just slowly pans away from Claire in the window, and then the phone starts ringing. And just such a perfect ending shot, and I love it so much. It's just the perfect way to end this movie, where you're just like, fuck. God damn it. It's not over. So now, let's talk about some fun facts. This was actually the first holiday horror. Who knew? So yeah, you know, we got Bloody Valentine's Day, we got horror movies based, or My Bloody Valentine, whatever. We got horror movie, Halloween. We have horror movies that are centered around Thanksgiving, literally every fucking holiday, same pattern every holiday. This was the first holiday horror movie, so that is really cool. We already discussed how this partially inspired Halloween. There is a belief that actually how John Carpenter came up with Halloween is because he was friends with Bob Clark, and he asked Bob Clark, what would it look like if you made a sequel to Black Christmas, because he loved this movie so much. And Bob Clark was like, nah, I don't think that's necessary. I don't think I want to do that. And so a lot of people believe that that was how John Carpenter came up with the idea for Halloween, was Michael Myers was his kind of answer to that, essentially. Which I like that, but I definitely don't think of as canon that Michael Myers is Billy, like one and the same. No. Because I don't find Michael Myers scary, and I find Billy scary. Barb was actually drunk during the scenes that she is drunk. At least, yeah, no, I think all of them. And she insisted on that, and she did great. It was phenomenal. Mrs. Mack is based off of Bob Clark's aunt, which, sorry, I forgot to mention this. Bob Clark's the director, by the way. The phone calls when they were originally recorded, the phone calls when they were originally filmed, the audio that was being spoken through the phone to the actresses on set was very different to what was used in the final film. It was much less vulgar. And yeah, so they recorded that separately. Multiple different actors were voiced Billy, including one who I guess stood on his head when recording to try and make his voice sound more like distorted and kind of deranged. Very interesting. The studio tried to get Bob Clark to change the ending so that the killer was actually Claire's boyfriend, the like hockey player, I think. And he refused because he was like, no, that's not happening. And I'm so glad that he did. Also, this movie was released under a couple different names. The original name was Silent Night, Evil Night, because they were worried that Black Christmas would, excuse me, they were worried that Black Christmas would be mistaken for a blaxploitation film, or make the movie be mistaken for a blaxploitation film. And the actually original title it was written under was Stop Me. So, and then the TV release title was Stranger in the House. So this movie has had 4 different titles. Can be a little confusing, I'm sure. Okay, let's move on to the remakes. Okay, so let's talk about the 2006 remake. Was released under the name sometimes Black, or like marketed as like Black Xmas for showing how extreme it was. And it's a pretty typical early to mid 2000s slasher, where it's kind of a lot of gratuitous, actually not as much as usual, but a lot of, you know, weird, random, unnecessarily sex and nudity and like very, very over the top gore and violence, in a way that just doesn't feel impactful at all. You know, it's not like, you know, like Ari Aster's films, Hereditary and Midsommar, have very intense gore, but the way it's done, it feels very impactful when it happens. Like, it's not just like, ew, gross, like, look away. It is, but it also is surrounded by plot that makes it like, oh my fucking god, I can't believe that just happened. So yeah, not the way these movies are, you know. I think we all can relate to like early to mid 2000s, from like 2000 to 2010. It was a little bit of a rough period for horror, at least as far as my tastes go. Good actresses, like a lot of actresses who were very of the time. It had the woman who played Phyllis in the original. She came back, something Martin. Anne Martin? No. I forget her name. Andrea Martin, I think, is her name. But yeah, you know, what's her name who played, Gretchen Wieners is in this. Dawn from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know a lot of these actresses' names, unfortunately. But yeah, there's a bunch of famous people you'd recognize in it. Yeah, so it's not great. So the good in this movie is pretty much that it feels at least more like a Black Christmas movie than the 2019 remake. That's not saying a lot though. And it feels like a bad one still. Okay. Because the 2019 I think is still kind of better than this one overall as a movie. Okay, let's get into the bad. The bad in this movie is a lot. It goes, we already discussed how it's just of its time. It goes way too deep into Billy's backstory and goes very weird and gross and disturbing with it. And like I said again, like not in a good way, not in an Ari Aster kind of way. Yeah, no. Yeah. And then, yeah, and it doesn't make Billy scarier. It doesn't. It almost seems like it's trying to humanize him, and then that's just confusing and weird. And yeah, it's just very cheesy and like, I don't understand it. It didn't do anything for me personally. I don't need all that backstory, and it kind of just ruined it. And then they add this like sister, so there's 2 killers, and they go way too far with the eye things. Like, so one of the most iconic shots of the original was the eye peering through the door, and somehow they turn that into like an obsession with eyes and ripping people's eyes out. And then, you know, Claire was killed by putting a bag over her head, and so that becomes into an obsession about killing people by putting a bag over their head and then ripping their eye out. And I know they try to like explain it by saying that's how his dad was killed, but like, I mean, I don't think they even ripped the eye out. Where did the eye thing come from? I don't understand. Like, it just was so bizarre. It made no sense and just really kind of ruined the character. I mean, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, canonically doesn't exist. Yeah, just all of the kills just generally are not very effective in my opinion. They're either very quick but try to be super gory still, and the whole bag and eye thing gets really not shocking after pretty quick, because you know that's exactly what's about to happen. So by the end, when there's all these eyes, you know, hanging on the Christmas tree or whatever, like, it's supposed to be shocking and it's really not. It's just like, of course he's using ornaments as fucking eyeballs, but it doesn't even make sense because, like, it looked like he was eating the eyeballs from other, it's like, where's he getting all these eyeballs? I don't understand. There's not enough eyes to go around. Yeah, I kind of just felt like the director of this movie read like a very brief like Cliff Notes summary of the original and was like, hey, there's something about an eye and something about a plastic bag, we'll turn that into like the main thing. Somebody named Billy and Agnes. The phone calls are not effective at all, feel very shallow and not scary, just not they just don't do the same thing, and it's just really badly performed. And yeah, and there's fewer of them, which I mean I think is probably a good thing because they, like I said, just really don't add anything. And it's like in the time that there's caller ID, so it makes it make less sense. And then there's this weird scene where there's somebody's phone is in the attic and somehow they can see the light flashing when it calls from like a floor below. I'm like, either you guys have some fucked up floorboards or what? Like, no. Shallow and mediocre characters, they're all mean and superficial and just assholes. And like, Barb was an asshole, but she was a funny asshole and an interesting asshole and a complex asshole. So yeah, not good. Tries to do the Peter red herring with the main girl's boyfriend. I don't remember either their names because I don't remember anybody's name in this movie besides one character, and that's the one who they try to do another red herring with, this Eve chick who's introduced for 2 seconds right after they give the backstory of Agnes, and then they try to imply that like she's Agnes somehow. We obviously know that because she doesn't have a fucked up eye for one, and she, wrong age, just so many, no, like it just made no fucking sense. And then she's immediately killed, and then they also, but even after she's killed, they find a bunch of weird stuff in her room and it's never explained. Like, it was such a throwaway character, and it's like you literally could take that whole character out of this movie and it would have made a lot more sense. And I mean, this movie wouldn't have made sense no matter, you'd have to like cut half the movie, but yeah, at least it would have been a little better. Yeah, bad acting, mediocre cinematography, not great soundtrack. There just really wasn't anything that made this movie great. It was fun for me to watch to try to pick up on the like Easter eggs for the original. I think it might be a fun Christmas movie to watch with a bunch of friends that you're not really paying attention to, and you're kind of just watching it to like every once in a while glance and be like, what the fuck is going on? That's a gnarly gore scene. Haha, what the fuck? And then to go back to your conversation, because that's probably how you're gonna get the most out of this movie. So that's what I would suggest. Okay, let's do some Easter eggs. So there are a lot of weird Easter eggs for this movie, and just really shallow ones that like hint at it, but just kind of point, honestly, when you've seen the original and love it, it just is like, oh, I remember how great the original is, thanks. Yeah. So we have a gift being given. Somebody receives the glass unicorn that or a glass unicorn. The Claire type character, I think her name actually was Claire in this one too, dies first and is stashed in the attic on a rocking chair, just like in the original, and isn't found until the very end. At least she's actually found in this one. Billy and Agnes, obviously, but obviously Agnes is an actual character in this one, and we get a lot more backstory. We actually see both of them. Like I said, same actress who played Phyllis, plays the house mom in this one. The whole plastic bag and the eye things, well, like, someone being pulled into the attic and killed. Just the boyfriend Kyle versus Mrs. Mack in the original. Mention of fixing the door. And then the phone calls. So, yeah, that's all the Easter eggs I found. Yeah, so overall, pretty shitty remake. It's fun to watch because I love the original so much, but yeah, I was kind of just waiting for it to be over at a certain point because it stopped being Easter eggs and just started being batshit crazy. So, okay, on to the 2019 remake. Still a bad remake, but I actually prefer it a tiny bit more. the 2019 remake. I have mixed feelings because if you literally just take out like a quarter of this movie, or like at least one plot point or thing about this movie, I would love this movie. If you also didn't call it a Black Christmas movie, I would love this movie. And I get, so this is a very loose adaptation, and I actually like that. I think if you're going to remake Black Christmas, it should be a loose adaptation. It shouldn't try to be a shot-for-shot remake because you're not going to do it the same way. So yeah, the loose adaptation they were going for, so yeah, if they just didn't have the supernatural element within this movie, I would love it. I would think it was a great loose adaptation of Black Christmas. It just, yeah, could have been really awesome. But then they went and made it supernatural, because what I liked about this movie initially, before I finished the movie, was that it turned this one solitary killer, who is terrifying, as I have discussed, into a killer or villain that is a much larger problem that affects a lot more women. And so Billy in the original is scary because of these larger issues. So it made the villain a lot more toxic masculinity and rape culture, which women deal with every single day and have to, have no choice. And so versus, like a lone serial killer, which is terrifying, but that's something very few women actually, statistically, obviously serial killers are an issue, but, compared to the amount of women who deal with sexual assault and misogyny in the workplace and things like that, and gaslighting, it's a lot smaller. So it definitely could have been a lot more of a far-reaching kind of villain, as far as, like, how relatable it is, let's just say. Yeah, I really liked that you couldn't trust kind of any man in the movie at the beginning. And, I mean, even at the end, like, because you just didn't know who was doing this, and I just really, really liked that, and the fact that it was these women who were together fighting against these men and trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, and it seemed like it was going for such a great message, and it tries to still say that message, but the fact that they make it supernatural undercuts it so much, because it takes the agency away from the men actually doing the stuff, by saying they're possessed by black goo. I don't really understand it, honestly. The other things other good things I liked about this movie was the Jingle Bell Rock, or I don't know if they actually was Jingle Bell Rock, the up in the frat house scene. That was great. It was very, sad, but like it was really a great empowering scene, and I actually really liked that. This movie could have been so good, and I'm like, that also makes me more mad about it, because I'm like, literally just fucked it all up. It was going so good, and you just fucked it all up. One of my favorite podcasts, Horror Virgin, they did an episode about this, and same kind of opinion, and just really explained it a lot better than I am right now. But yeah, I really, really wish that they just didn't go supernatural. Yeah, the killers are just physically intimidating. They're not creepy, really. I mean, obviously the things that the men say to the women when they're not under these masks or whatever are really creepy and gross. But the killers themselves are not really physically intimidating, because like I said, you're showing so much of them and there's so many of them, and they're supernatural, so it just loses the realness that makes, and just that bone-chilling mystery of the original. It just doesn't work the same. Yeah, it's just all cheap jump scares, and just, it wasn't really not great. I get how this is a Black Christmas movie, because the original Black Christmas was kind of at least I consider it a feminist horror movie. So yeah, I can see how that is the connection. And there's a couple, subtle Easter eggs, which I will get into in a second, but yeah, just the way that they ended up going with this movie really fucking disappointed me, because I really wish it was so much better. It had the potential to be. So yeah, just really disappointing. Okay, let's discuss some Easter eggs. They are pretty few with this one. Claude/Claudette the cat. There's a rocking chair in the attic. I don't think the one girl who gets killed in the attic is tied to the rocking chair with Christmas lights. I don't remember if she has a bag over her face. There's mention of fixing a door. There's DMs instead of phone calls, which I liked that, like, because it made sense. I mean, it would be weird if they were just getting, like, phone calls from actually, I kind of wish they got phone calls from an unknown number. Might have been better. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that. And a Claire type character, I don't know if her name was actually Claire in this one, dies first, and nobody notices and is left out in a pretty obvious place of, like, on this fucking balcony that you'd think somebody would look out a window and see your friend's frozen body chilling out there, but apparently not. So, okay. Obliviousness, one thing that runs through all of these movies sometimes, even the ones I love. But I mean, I guess it's a horror movie, so if people weren't oblivious, it wouldn't work as well. Okay, I think that's all I have to say about that. Over 47 years later, Black Christmas, the original, holds up as a horror masterpiece and works in every way possible and is great still. Whereas a lot of older horror movies, sometimes when I watch them, I'm like, I get for certain reasons why this was iconic, but it's also kind of crap. Yeah, so the sequels, though they can be like a funny or cheesy watch with your friends when you're just looking for something to throw on, I think all they'll really be remembered for is the poor imitation of the original that they are. Like a lot of horror remakes. So, yeah, that is my thoughts about Black Christmas, the underrated masterpiece, and its underwhelming sequels. Well, yeah, that's the end of the video. And really quick, I know I haven't posted on here in a really long time. I filmed a whole video like a month or two ago and had major Wi-Fi issues where it was literally taking 3 days to upload a 30-minute video. So and it was about Real Housewives, and it was about the first part of the reunion. And so by the time I would have been able to upload it, the fourth part of the reunion would have been airing. So it was like, I just nixed the whole thing. It was really annoying too, because I filmed and uploaded the whole fucking thing, or filmed and edited the whole thing, was trying to upload it, but 3 days and it was uploaded 3%. So no, I fixed it now. Hopefully should have no issues. If you see this video, that means I was able to upload it. So yay for me. Cool. Well, I hope everybody has a happy holidays, and yeah, I will see you in the new year. Okay,